Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to have Rebecca Scott here with us today, who's just one of my favorite people because she just lifts up my spirit every time I talk to her. She's going to teach us actually something really valuable. This is the stuff that we devalue in pharmaceutical medicine. We don't think much about mindfulness, meditation, and how to sit with like the difficulty and the challenges of chronic disease. And so she's going to help us find new tools to navigate some of the challenges that come with any chronic disease. So she's a leadership coach, and she's so passionate about helping people who live with chronic diseases to find their way through, to figure out how they can live joyful, purposeful lives and to find meaning with under new circumstances. And so she's a writer, and the way I actually came across her was I read one of her blogs and I was like, who is this person? She's so witty and funny, and she's an excellent writer. Like, she gives words and space to like the experiences of chronic disease that sometimes are hard to verbalize. And so, anyways, I just got introduced to her through her blog, which we'll share with everybody, because I think it'll just add a beautiful dimension to your day if you just read some of these pieces that she's written. So, we are going to be talking about mindful self-compassion today. This is really a way to find empathy for yourself, to be kind to yourself even in the face of really difficult chronic health issues. And without, further ado, Rebecca, thank you for being here. I just so appreciate everything that you do and how you just show up in the world.
Oh, thank you. I'm super delighted to be here talking about MS and chronic illness and what helps me get through in the hopes that it might help others get through is like my favorite thing. Like right
Yeah.
below. Oh, I was going to say like a bowl of Doritos, but that's a terrible thing to say to a functional medicine doctor. So,
We will ignore what my kids hide from me,
yeah,
let's just say.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So, since we're talking about mindful self compassion, we thought maybe starting with just a quick moment of mindfulness, kind of like a meditation, would be a good thing. So, I invite you to participate with me if that is comfortable and what you want to do. As always, you can turn off your camera if you like. But let's just take a minute and settle into wherever you are. If you're standing, really ground into those feet. If you're sitting, feel your feet on the floor and your rear in your chair. And just take a moment to feel gravity doing its thing with you. And as you're feeling gravity's pull, see if you can notice any sound. No need to name the sounds, just notice them. And if you hear more than one, just move gently from one to the next, to the next. And then let go of the sounds and see what you taste in your mouth. I made the mistake of having a pickle before this session, so there's definitely a pickly taste there, but just whatever's there. Notice it, breathe into it, and let it go. Now let's move to your nose. Take a nice deep breath in. See what you smell, if anything, even if it's just good clean air. Notice that smell and let it go. Now notice what you can feel on your skin. If you're not really noticing anything, you can focus on the air coming in and out of your nostrils. Let that go. And finally, if you close your eyes, just notice if you see anything, any colors or pattern behind your eyelids. So if you've got your gaze softly going, just see what you gently see. And now that I think we've checked in with all of the senses, take one more deep, nourishing breath and let it out and come back to us, at least a little more present.
I love what you said about let gravity do its thing. I'd never heard that before. And it felt good just to like let go and let that happen.
Is I feel like so often we're like
Yeah.
about whatever's happening, and yeah, if you can settle back into gravity, sometimes it can bring a little ease, and that's really all I'm going for in life ever is just a little ease, and then hopefully they all add up to more ease.
Love it. So, Rebecca, tell us briefly your story of how you came to be diagnosed. And what I
Yeah.
really want to know is what were some of the events? What was happening in your life prior to you being diagnosed? Like weeks, months, years before the diagnosis? Because I'm always interested in learning about people's triggers and what
Yeah.
makes them push them into overt autoimmunity.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you ask this question before, and I love this question. It's so interesting. I often refer to the 6 months leading up to my diagnosis as the year everything went to shit. And I realize 6 months isn't a year, but just go with this. When in November, my grandmother died, and I wasn't terribly close to her, but it was jarring for the family. It was the only time since I graduated from high school that I've spent Thanksgiving at my parents' house. So I was there with my mother's grief as well. So that was the first little piece. A month later, one of my very best friends from high school committed suicide, which obviously was incredibly upsetting for me. And I had a cousin die a week after Christmas. So it was Thanksgiving, the week before Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving. Again, not terribly close to that cousin, but I was there for my father's grief, and it was it was really a lot all at once. And then about a month later, actually on Super Bowl Sunday, for any Americans in the audience, I was out shopping for treats, yummy food that, again, we won't talk about right now, but still yummy food that I was going to serve to the guests coming to the party that night. And I had to pee while grocery shopping, which was a little weird. So I went to the bathroom, did my thing. But as I was sitting there, I was like, man, I can't feel my feet. That's weird. And over the course of the next month and a half, the numbness and tingling moved from my feet to my thighs to my midsection in MS hug kind of style. And then finally, it settled in my arms. And the thing is, I didn't think much about any of this because I'd had weird neurological stuff in the past that hadn't added up to anything. When I was 15, one of my arms went mostly numb. And the doctor was like, oh, it's a pinched nerve. Don't worry about it. And it did eventually go away. And then I had some face spasms a couple of years before my diagnosis. And again, eventually they went away. Didn't think anything of it. So it wasn't until my sleep was interrupted by the arm situation that I finally went to a doctor, went to a neurologist, and really quickly was diagnosed.
Yeah. Well, that is quite a story. I mean, thinking about the cumulative effect of
Uh,
each of those events,
yeah.
it's not
Hmm.
unusual for those of us that have a chronic disease to look back and look at the patterns and say, yep, that stirred the pot of autoimmunity and inflammation to the point where we have overt symptoms. So, and you're a young person at this point, so this is incredibly hard and stressful. Like, how did you cope in those early days when this weight was just dropped on your head?
Uh, I, well, you'll love this. When I got diagnosed, I was by myself and I went next door to a coffee shop, bought a pack of cigarettes because that's a great idea. And a big bottle of cherry Coke and sat and cried for a bit, which that's it's a logical reaction. And I initially coped by telling people about it. Like I wasn't one of those like let's not talk about this. I took my time. I did wasn't I was diagnosed before Facebook. That's how old I am and how long I have had this disease. Is that there was no public forum in which to shout about it. So I just went to friends and family and kind of did the rounds, honestly saying, like, I don't know what this means for me, but this is what I'm doing. And I poured most of my anxiety in the early days to figuring out what medication I was going to choose of the three that were available and really focusing on the stress of, oh my God, I'm going to stick needles in myself regularly. And beyond that, I think I just kind of pushed it all away, especially when my symptoms faded. I was like, well, I mean, I can't do anything about the future. I'll just take these drugs and keep going, which worked great until my mobility started declining.
Mhm.
And yeah, then it was my frustrations became everyday frustrations, and that meant I had to shift. And I only feel I was diagnosed 20 years ago, and I only now feel like I do a good job of handling the stress. And God, that's sad that it took 20 years, but I mean, I suppose some of us never get good or even good-ish at it. So in so many ways, I'm lucky.
I mean, I imagine if we acknowledged that stress can contribute to the onset and progression of autoimmune diseases, of MS, of inflammation, and we put into place support, like real
Mm-hmm.
support, where it's like, let us teach you how to do a few things to help you
Mm-hmm.
get grounded and get you out of, spinning out of control. I think that would have a big impact. And this is why
Yeah.
it's taken some of us so long to get the stress piece under control. So tell me about like how you pivoted when things with MS got more difficult and you had to change the way you were doing things with your career and personal life.
Yeah. So, personal life actually hasn't changed a lot over the years. I incredibly lucky again. I've been with the same partner since before my diagnosis, and he's hung in there through all of it. So, like that, thank you, heavens, thank you, whatever good things I've done in the world, and especially thank you to him for all of that. But for work, I was for most of my career a special events manager. I worked at a wonderful museum and library and theater here in Washington, D.C. If you're ever here, I will be happy to take you to the Folger Shakespeare Library, which is newly accessible this spring when they reopen. So, lots of stairs in this building, marble steps going up to the entrance. And when you're working an event, you can sit down, but the best way to do it is on your feet, right, to get a tablecloth, right? I mean, it sounds silly, but it really was my passion, was taking care of people in an event setting. And eventually my body said, please don't. Please don't. I fell and got stitches one day at work. Like, I tried using a mobility scooter, but I couldn't do it anymore. So I spent a year in a job that was good enough, but definitely not the right fit for me. And luckily it was just a year's contract. So I would say the thing I tapped into there was like, all right, well, let's give this a try. Let's see what happens. And at the end of the year, it was like, all right, well, that was the year. And then I tapped into humility and optimism. And this is where Facebook does come into the story. I said to Facebook, hey, Facebook, I don't know what to do now. The thing that I was good at, that I loved, I can't do anymore. And my high school English teacher, one of my favorite people in the world, who I had kept in touch with, reached out to me and said, I have a leadership consulting firm. I love the people I work with. I would love for you to work with us. Do you want to try doing administration for us? And I thought, leadership consulting? Really? Is that even a thing? Like, aren't you just a good leader or not a good leader? But I loved her. I loved the people that I met. So I figured, all right, let's give this a try. And within 6 months, I was hooked on the work that they did. And within a year, I had applied to Georgetown's School of Transformational Leadership to become a leadership coach myself. And 6 years later, here I am.
Beautiful. So, had it not been for MS, you wouldn't be doing this work, right?
Yep. Yep. I try to always say this is a tremendous result from a terrible thing. And I'm quite sure I could have been a very happy, healthy, able-bodied event manager for the rest of my life too. But like, what a gift. What a gift on top of a pile of shit. What a gift.
I love it. Yeah, like you, I love being an anesthesiologist, but then I had a weak left arm and I couldn't do it anymore. And then it was like, what am I going to do now? And I love what I do now. And I would have never been here had it not been for that pile of shit. So, well, let's get into like some of the coping mechanisms that have worked for you and how
Yeah.
you've been dealing with all that MS has dealt, and help you kind of cope and get through and do the things that still matter to you, to still be who you are. Because at the end of the day, I think we all just kind of want to be who we are and engage in the things that bring us joy. So tell us about mindfulness, self-compassion, and how all that kind of came to be for you.
Yeah. So I think when one is undergoing the myriad frustrations of life with chronic illness, and I'll speak specifically to life with MS, which of course differs for everyone because isn't that fun? And it even can differ from day to day, double fun. So it is so easy to want to just like shove it aside and like not really experience the pain or the stiffness or the frustration or the embarrassment. Oh my goodness, like so much embarrassment, at least for me, comes with this disease. I mean, you may have noticed moments ago, if I'm drinking water, I assure you I'm drinking it with both hands firmly around the glass because otherwise I will baptize myself and or drop it. So, stuff like rushing to the bathroom, like just so many vaguely to extremely embarrassing things can happen. So I spent a good amount of time, I'm realizing this now, Dr. Susan, that, with coping, I kind of ostriched it, like head in the sand. Or if you'll allow me to mix my metaphors, like I felt like I was a brain and like all of this, like the head, except for when I had head tremors, like this was Rebecca and everything else, like that was just something else. That was just like the meat sack that the real me was on top of.
I mean,
Um,
talk about a disconnect between like the mind and the body, right? Like, can I just forget about everything below the neck?
pretty much that really was the way I was living. And I mean, again, understandably, like who wants to be very connected to pain or discomfort or frustration? And I realized with things like hand tremors, if I could be mindful and not mindful in a like, what's my hand doing? But like, hey, hand, what's going on today? Things would settle just a little. And again, really, if MS has taught me anything, it's that every little bit of ease and comfort and peace counts so much. Um, yeah, so that I mean that's the first thing is that I did not want mindfulness, and then slowly personally I was like, oh, maybe a little bit of like actually paying attention to this body serves me well. And then a couple of years ago, a friend of mine invited me to participate in a mindful self-compassion class. And I thought, how cool. This is going to be great for my coaching clients. Like everybody's so stressed out. Everybody has imposter syndrome. Everybody, oh gosh, my clients are going to love this. And within an hour of class, I was like, shit, this is for me. Okay. Because at the time, I was especially dealing with two things. The first thing was my mobility has really declined over the years. I mentioned that before, but now 20 years into MS, I use a rollator pretty much all of the time. And I sometimes my legs just don't cooperate at all. And I would get up in the morning and try to get out of bed, and my legs would not cooperate. And I literally would say, pardon my French, fuck you, legs. Like, I can't believe. And what? Like, the impulse makes so much sense. And yet, talking to myself and my body like that, like if I said that to another human, do you think they'd cooperate with me? I don't think so. So, being in this mindful self compassion course made me go, oh my goodness, my self talk is terrible. And what it gave me a glimmer of what might be possible if I could still have that impulse of, oh, these legs, and yet be able to notice it, filter it, and get curious about it instead.
I mean,
And
it's like the opposite of your knee-jerk reflex, right? It's like having to rewire and go, oh no, no, don't
mhm,
be, don't be so upset. Maybe we could look at it a different way. And I love what you said about like the hand, and you just kind of acknowledge it and notice it, and it gets a little better.
yeah,
It's not gone, but it's a little
no,
better.
God no. Yeah, I mean that really a thing I love about mindful self-compassion, I feel like I'm galloping ahead, but I know we'll get to all of the things if we keep going, is that nothing about mindful self-compassion says you need to be Susie Sunshine or, that positive vibes only. Forget that. No.
Can
We're
we
gonna, oh,
can
go
we
ahead.
define toxic positivity?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have like a textbook definition, but my experience,
I
like,
want the Rebecca definition.
okay, so the Rebecca definition I'm somewhat active on Twitter, and like if you want any kind of negativity, you can definitely get it on Twitter. But in the MS community on Twitter, at least, there are pockets that when you say, "Man, I'm having a terrible day," or "I'm so frustrated with my husband because he just doesn't understand." There are people who say, "Aren't you lucky to have a husband? Isn't that, I mean, he's going through stuff too, and you're just the luckiest, and the universe or God or whoever doesn't give us anything we can't handle." And just be positive. Be positive. There's so many good things out there. And the thing is, there's so many shitty things too. And I think you just miss stuff if you can't see both of them. That's the Rebecca thought on that.
It's about being real, right? Like you can be wealthy and well connected and full of privilege, but you're allowed to have a bad day or many bad days and just have things that are not optimal. So I wanted to call that out because I think, I feel like in American culture, we sugarcoat a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Make
Yeah.
everything look pretty. Be grateful, be positive. And you know what? Sometimes that's just not real.
No, it isn't. Well, and the whole reason, I mean, you mentioned my blog. The reason why I started my blog was I wasn't seeing, there's more of it now, but at the time, I just wasn't seeing people being frank about how hard things could be, and like specifically the ways that they could be hard. So you'll find if you look me up online, you're going to see me talking about sex and about poop, because these are two things that are, I mean, vital to everybody's lives. I mean, bless you, Dr. Susan, you talk about poop too, but these are things that can make our lives much better and much worse. And MS messes with both of them. Yay.
Yeah. For sure. So maybe we could start kind of digging into these tools. What
Yeah,
are they? How do we use them? When can we use them? Take us through.
yeah. So real quick, I'll mention two names, and I'd be happy to share links with you later or whatever. Dr. Susan's linking to my blog. We'll make that work. But mindful self-compassion, like the concept, was created by Dr. Kristen Neff and Chris Germer. And there are three components to mindful self-compassion. The first one, shock, is mindfulness. And the definition of mindfulness is present moment awareness without judgment. Um, so if you participated in the centering today, you probably had some good present moment awareness. And anytime you think, "Oh, my leg," you have present moments awareness. Well done. The key is without judgment. And that is hard. That is really, really hard. Now, with physical discomfort, pain, etc., you probably don't judge yourself personally for that. You don't think, "Damn it, Rebecca, Rhonda, Karen, why are you hurting now?" However, you might judge yourself if you have a moment of, "Oh, I am so tired. I can't get anything done today. If I'd exercised yesterday, I would have the energy to do something today." Or if I'd eaten a better breakfast, I would have the energy. Or, there's so many ways we pile on to ourselves. So being able to notice that judgment will help loosen the hold on it. And maybe, eventually the judgment won't pop up as much. And
Mhm.
I could actually, it's not even maybe. It happens. I've had that experience myself. So thing one, present moment awareness without judgment. That's the mindfulness piece. The second piece is acknowledging I'm not alone in this. other people feel this way. And that is common humanity. That is what the official mindful self-compassion people call it. And it's a moment of going from isolation to, oh, poor me, why is this happening to me? Which are absolutely fair feelings to have, to be more expansive and thinking, yeah, you know what? I've got people next to me and around me and across the globe who are having a hard time as well. And in that sort of a moment for me, I really connect with other people across the globe who have MS. People I've met in Dr. Susan's programs, people I've met at programs in the community, it's a huge community. And if you can draw on the strength of those numbers, what a glorious thing. All right. The third piece is really the compassion piece. It's self-kindness. Like, again, when those voices come up who say, lazy, you should be doing more, etc., just noticing them and turning them down and coming up with something kind to say to yourself. So I've been yammering on a lot. I would love to do 2 activities with you. The first one looks a little goofy. I've watched myself doing it on camera a lot, so feel free to turn your camera off or just not do it. But this is my very favorite, like, mindful self-compassion hack, which is if you are having a moment, could be with a partner, with a child, with a work situation, or even just with yourself, and you are frustrated and falling into just like your mind is racing and everything else, you can touch yourself. Now, I did say I talk about sex a lot. That's not what I mean. What I mean is soothing touch. So our bodies, as you probably know, don't know the difference between a physical threat, like a bear chasing after you, and a mental threat, which can be other people saying mean things to you, or it can be you saying mean things to yourself. So what you can do in these moments is pretty much the same sort of thing you do to a sad child who is coming to you, which is offer some sort of soothing touch that really can settle the nervous system. Again, it won't make everything better, but it will just make things a little bit easier. So I'm going to go through a handful of soothing touch motions. Please try. Christy, I want to touch on that, and it's true, isn't it? So as you think of that, as you think of like the last time you were a jerk to yourself or your temper got short with somebody else and you thought, oh, what am I doing? You could put your hand on your heart. I'm closing my eyes, so if you don't want to turn your camera off, I'm not looking at you. You can put both hands on your heart. You can even just clasp your hands together and rest them in your lap, making sure your shoulders are relaxed too. You can give yourself a little squeeze, so like a little hug just for you. You can put one hand on your cheek or both hands on your cheek. This one I always like to sit in just a little bit because this is the sort of thing my mother does to me when I'm visiting. And you can also just rub in small circles on your chest. All right, I'm opening my eyes now. And if one of those worked for you, if more than one worked for you, that's awesome. You can also come up with your own version. And if you're like, this just doesn't land for me, you can always like pet a dog or a cat or grab your kid and say, I need a hug. You know, there's so many things you can do. But I really love if you're ever in a meeting with me and you see me doing this, you're gonna know something's going on. But like, you could just have some mild indigestion. Who knows? Nobody's gonna know what you're doing. All right, so that's like the mindful self-compassion hack. I'm going to lead you through a quick meditation now. And I invite you again to bring to mind some time where you were frustrated with yourself or with your body. Keep it at like a 2 or a 3 in a scale of 1 to 10. No need to ruin your afternoon or evening by leaning into this feeling, but just get in that, I'm a little annoyed right now feeling. And we're going to do a self-compassion break, which touches on the 3 pieces of mindful self-compassion that I mentioned before. Whenever you're indulging in mindful self-compassion, please feel free to use a little soothing touch. So I'm going to put my hand on my heart. And the first step is to acknowledge or name the emotion or whatever challenge is going on. So you might say, I feel frustrated. I feel sad. And if you can't put your finger on what the emotion is, ouch. Ouch can really sometimes encapsulate it. Then acknowledge that you're not alone. You could think or say, lots of people feel this way. Having MS is hard, and people across the globe know it. I am not alone. Now, the third piece is self-kindness. So remind yourself to be kind. May I be kind to myself. May I love myself. May I remember that I'm a good person. None of these phrases need to be the phrase for you. Just find something that rings true and take a deep breath or 2 and let it all go. And come back when you're ready. And that's mindful self-compassion in a nutshell. Acknowledge what's going on. Acknowledge that you're not alone. Come up with some wishes for kindness for yourself.
I particularly love step 2 because it sort of takes the drama out of it for me. I'm the only person who's ever experienced this. This is the worst thing in the world, right? Like I think and talk in a lot of hyperbole. But if I can just stop and remember, nope, there are other people kind of going through this. And not to minimize what I'm feeling, but also acknowledging like I'm not unique.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like I'm not the first person and I'm not the last person who's gone through this. That helps me a lot.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Thank you. And like it just feels like there's this community behind it, even though it's maybe all in my head, like imagining people across the globe.
Yeah, I was doing a mindful self-compassion presentation in the fall with a woman who is a breast cancer survivor. And she found mindful self-compassion when she was undergoing treatment. And she said that whenever she did a self-compassion break, she would picture all the women around the world surviving breast cancer now and who had done it in the past. It's like this wonderful, I believe she even said she imagined them giving her a hug. And I thought, oh my God, what a beautiful image.
And visualization's powerful.
Yeah.
It can change the flow of neurotransmitters, hormones, cytokines. We can actually influence our physiology and what's happening inside us chemically, biochemically, just with the thoughts that we engage in.
Yeah.
We do have some control over that.
Mhm. Would it be okay with you? And more importantly, would it be okay with Christy if I requested that Christy come off mute and tell us a little about what she said in the chat? If you're up for it, Christy. If you're not, no big deal.
Yeah, sure, I don't mind. And, okay, so I was just saying that I tend to absolutely have a lot of disappointment in my life with MS. I was a promising student, and I'll just give you a little quick promising student, promising employee at my job, just always like manager's right hand man. And I've had some, as we all have here, downfall in some of my capabilities and functions. So, and I tend to judge myself pretty harshly for that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm doing the best I can. So I thought yesterday, like, how can I have more acceptance for myself? And I recently had a manager's like self-evaluation or an about, I did my own self-evaluation. I had my manager's evaluation through work. And I thought, why couldn't I frame my views of myself through that lens? So I was laying in bed last night and because, when a manager gives you an evaluation, typically they don't, they're not scrutinizing every single bit of you, right? And they see your successes and they also can see some of your ways of improvement. And so, yeah, I was laying in bed and I thought to myself, okay, well, I did really well yesterday within my capabilities of working through my responsibilities for the day. I can't compare myself to the past. I have to compare myself. If I'm going to have any comparison or any judgment or whatever you want to say for yourself, it's, did I do the best that I can do with what I'm able to do today, not compared to who I used to be. So anyway, so I said to myself, okay, well, I know that I did the best that I can within my capabilities today, and I should be proud of that. And then I didn't get a chance to exercise yesterday. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to judge myself for not exercising. I'm just going to say I can try again tomorrow. Not a judgment,
Mm-hmm.
just effort to do it in the future.
Oh, Christy, thank you so much for sharing all of that. There were so many beautiful things in there. And I especially love the idea of giving yourself a review for today as if you were a kind and compassionate manager. Like how lovely to think of. Like I had a really great boss at my events job, and I'm going to use that in the future when I've come to the end of a rotten day. I'm going to say, all right, what would my Caroline say about how I did today? You also reminded me of something I saw online once, which was, some days on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10 is a 6, in that if you are, maybe a better mathematical way of phrasing it, I think would be like, if you only have 60% to give, then you're giving 100% if you're giving 60%. Being able to know that the scale moves day to day can be incredibly freeing. So thank you for that reminder.
And also a reminder that, we treat others generally with a lot of compassion and respect, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we forget to do that for ourselves. So treating ourselves as we would treat others I think is really important, not just reserving that for others.
Yeah, it's kind of like a reverse golden rule.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It is.
we spend so much time remembering to treat others as we'd like to be treated, but really flip that and
Right.
reverse it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a question about EFT or somatic movements. Is that something you have any experience with? Emotional freedom technique?
I do not. I have a little bit of experience with somatics. And like this, the gestures, the soothing touch gestures are all related to somatics, but neither of those are my area of expertise.
But what I will tie in that with is that with the meditation that you did at the beginning,
Mhm,
where you brought in all the senses,
mhm,
that is actually a technique to ground ourselves
mhm.
when we just need a little support. And it helps to integrate the mind and body when we turn on the senses. And that's something we can always tap into, right? If I'm having a difficult moment, I'll say, like, name 3 colors in the room, name 2 sounds that I can hear, and 1 smell.
Mhm.
And if I can do that in a slow enough manner rather than doing it all in 10 seconds, like, it takes me out of my automatic behaviors. And I've now turned on those senses, which kind of helps us connect to our subconscious, actually, and to get out of the automatic, knee-jerk reflexes that we have. Yeah. So I want to talk about one of your blogs, where you talked about hope versus reality, because I think this is very relevant to what we're talking about today. And you talked about this concept of polarity, and you did it so beautifully, but I wonder if you could share some of that with our group here today so they can kind of see the tension, but the oneness of those two seemingly opposing ideas,
Yeah, so that
acceptance, hope, and reality.
reality, yeah. Well, and then there are all sorts of other polarities like accept what is and desire more, and rest and activity. So I've listed those out. Now, what the heck is a polarity? So a polarity is, as Dr. Susan was just saying, two seemingly contradictory ideas or actions or things that choosing one of the two really wouldn't serve you in the long term. So they're interdependent, and you need both of them in order to succeed. So I think the easiest one to think about is activity and rest. And it's especially relevant, I think, for living with a chronic illness. You need rest. Rest is so important, but if all you did was rest, it would be no good. Similarly, you need to exercise, you need to walk around. There are so many active things one needs to do in the day. However, if you don't rest, it doesn't work. So, two things interdependent, and you need them both. So, hope and reality. I was inspired to write that because I had read something that Dr. Gavin Giovannoni, which I probably mispronounced, but that's okay, who is, as you might know, is a very prominent MS doctor. He had written something about how once you reach the age of 46 or 45, maybe, chances are nothing was going to get better for you with MS. This is an overstatement of it, but that was what I read that morning. And I was like, oh my God, I'm 46. My life is over. Everything is bad forever. Which was an exaggeration of reality, but it still felt very much like reality. And if I allowed myself to lean so hard toward that reality, like it how could I go on with my day? How could I meet with clients? How could I even consider trying to exercise that day? Um, when all I'm thinking is, nothing good's ever going to happen again because I'm 46. And the hope piece is lovely, thinking about, hey, maybe they will figure out how to restore myelin in my nerve cells, and maybe they will figure out how to, I don't know, harness some new drug treatment. Like, there's so many maybes that that can keep me going. And if I focus only on these very seductive, very sexy maybes, then I'm not going to exercise. I'm not going to take my drugs now. Like, so I have to find a way to lean in both directions without falling down, which is extra hard because my balance is crap, but you get me.
Yeah.
So that's
And
hilarious. And you can map them. There are all kinds of fun stuff you can do with them. There's some in the blog, and I'm always happy to talk about them too.
And I actually put a link to her, that particular blog in the chat. So if you'd like to check it out, just hit that link so it opens up for you. And just her general blog, Stumbler blog. I love that. It's a great name.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, and I love that you keep it real. You have learned to acknowledge and have a level of acceptance. Like, that acceptance piece is hard. It took
Mm.
years to find acceptance and say, okay, this is the new reality, and I got to just figure my way through it. And there was a quote that I saw that you had written, and I want to read it. You said, so I continue to stumble forward, living into the paradox of being a regular gal and a unicorn, both mired in and more than my disease and disability. And I feel that quote just really encapsulates who you are, how you've adapted and coped and found your way through something really difficult that most people may never really experience.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That yeah, I love that quote too. I especially love thinking of myself as a unicorn because that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe my
So,
cane is my horn. Who knows?
yeah. Well, and you have, like, you feel so strongly about this technique of mindful self-compassion. You have a course that you teach. I think this would be so helpful for those of us, struggling with this disease. Oh, thank you. You put it in the chat. So can you tell us a little bit about the course? And you've also put up a discount code for
Yes,
people
I
who
put
are
a discount
interested.
code, which is one of right after Doritos. I love discounts. I like words that start with D. So the person who taught the Mindful Self-Compassion course that I loved so much is a delightful gentleman who used to be a Buddhist monk, whose name is Mark Rovner. Mark and I laugh and have so much fun together. And we co-lead this course. As I like to say, he is the expert. He has gone through mindful self-compassion training. I am a novice who is very enthusiastic. So we have a 6-week course. It's 2 hours every week. And we do a lot of mindful self-compassion. We also dip into a few other techniques that we think really help for living well and raising the baseline of how you feel. And everyone who has taken the class has come out with wonderful things to say. And I do mean literally everyone. Now, mind you, only 20 people have taken the class so far. We did 2 cohorts last year. But everyone reports a shift. And that's just the coolest thing in the world. Like, again, MS, big pile of shit, but it was fertilizer for some really cool things, including getting to help people shift their mindset a little. It's pretty cool.
It's really cool. And these are tools that don't have to be super expensive or hidden behind some expensive provider. Like we can all use these tools to help ourselves. And yes, it's a little bit of effort, but it's worth it. And so let's recap some of the tools you taught us.
Yeah. So the first one is soothing touch. Whatever works, do it. Remind yourself that, oh, yeah, will just settle you a little bit. And the other big one is the mindful self-compassion break. So what's going on? Like, what do I feel right now? Hey, I'm not the only one. May I be kind to myself? That's it. Just 3 little pieces. And if you can practice that daily, even if you don't have a particular like inciting incident, it's almost 8 p.m. I have MS. But yeah, you don't need an inciting incident, even like when you wake up in the morning, like a moment of soothing touch and like, ugh, I have this dumb disease. Lots of people have this dumb disease. May I be patient as I navigate this dumb disease? Great. Get on with your day.
Love that. Yeah, it could be when nothing bad is happening. You just want to be kind to yourself for no good reason at all. Well, Rebecca, thank you for being here and sharing with us something that's so important as sort of a missing piece of how we can better navigate difficult health issues, difficult life scenarios. So I hope that we can continue to learn from you. Thank you for spending your time and energy with us. And I look forward to learning more about your course.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And again, I just put my email address in the chat. If 50% off still feels like a stretch, reach out to me. Like, let's talk. We never want costs to be a barrier to people having use of these tools. So, and thank y'all for staying through all of this. It's really been fun spending time with you. And thanks, Dr. Susan.
Thank you. Loved having you here. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all that you do to support the MS and chronic disease community.